So thanks again, James, one, for the really kind intro. And it's always a privilege and great to be supporting this amazing network. So James asked me to share a few insights on ways to drive sales team engagement and development and pipeline in 2021. So I've got to do all that in 7 minutes. So here's my attempt. I think firstly, probably to echo one of the phrases I think Penny used, which is, unfortunately, I don't have a silver bullet, which I can kind of share in 7 minutes that will address those things. It's a combination of many behaviors and actions, but there's certainly a few basic principles that you can put in place to set up the foundations for success. And as I was thinking about this talk and all the things that we're putting in place here at Peakon to address those points, I actually noticed foundations of engagement of what we need to succeed applies in many ways outside of sales. So as I started to distill this down, I was thinking, okay, what's a good analogy? So if we take the last 9 months, I think one thing we could all agree on is it's created so much uncertainty and change. And that feeling of uncertainty and radical change impacts people's ability to focus and apply discipline. And those that know me are going to say, what's the most successful things you need to do in sales? Focus and discipline. And I think they're also the 2 most important things if you turn your hand to anything. But during the pandemic, when everything we were used to doing, that creates certainty in our lives, it fell around us, whether that was the commute to work, the big boardroom pitch, the school runs, even sitting in a pub with your friends, even sitting on a park bench at times. We lost some of those critical things that make us feel engaged and happy, which drives success. And yet within a few weeks of the pandemic, something actually quite incredible happened. We all started making sourdough bread. Why on earth did that happen? Now, boredom, maybe. But actually what it created in those moments was this new common sense of achievement for people to focus on. As simple as this sounds, it created something for everyone to share and talk about. It created a new purpose to create engagement. And we started to connect in a new way. So people learned new skills. In my case, I'm still struggling a lot with my sourdough making. You grew off the back of it. You started to share it with friends on these kind of new abilities. So when I think about success in 2021, for your teams, there are some principles that we can take from this example and apply to ensure that we drive engagement, development, and pipeline in 2021. So those that know me well, I love an acronym. It's the easiest way I can remember anything. And the acronym that I use a lot, and I think applies to this, is LAT, L-A-T. So the L is for loyalty. If you want to build an engaged sales team in 2021 and find that extra 10%, you need to know what you're fighting for, what you're aiming for this year. And what I ask is, have you set a purpose that's simple for people to follow? A clear mission for what success looks like in 2021? Or is it clouded by lots of other metrics and many other mixed messages that we tend to get when we try to rally people in the start of a new year? To pick something and focus on it. So at Peakon, we double down our focus on becoming world-class. We want to set the standard and drive this idea of what it means to be world-class. We want that reputation, we want to have that legacy. And the great thing is then everyone holds each other accountable to it. And it creates a sense of loyalty to each other around why we're doing what we're doing. The A is for attitude. And I think, make no mistake, 2020 was hard, for all of us leaders. No one's lived through a pandemic. A lot of us didn't even work in the last recession. So there's it really was leading in the dark for a lot of this. But what I learned is that it's incredible what you can do with a can-do attitude. And one of the things I stressed the whole time is I don't want COVID to define our team or the work we put in at Peakon. I wanted to say, because of COVID, we accomplished this. I know that's easy to say and much harder to do, but a really simple practical step and some things that I took that set up this kind of growth and ideas you can take into 2021 is something called a UAD, another acronym, right? But I run weekly sessions now of my direct reports that are called UADs, ups and downs of the week. I run this with all of them, and we make sure that we go through all the downs. I share mines in transparency, then we end it on the highs. So everything kind of comes off your chest before you head into the weekend, and it creates a bit of focus again for what you need to accomplish in the following week. Some kind of interesting stats. So in the global Peakon data, which is the platform that we sell and provide to organizations, we actually saw that engagement went up across the board. Engagement went up in 2020. And that was driven off the fact that a lot of people had more autonomy in the way that they worked. And I think that's something that, again, because of COVID, hopefully it will stay and we'll have more autonomy in the way that we work. But we did see, when we link back to this talk, is that the growth scores dropped. And they dropped significantly for Gen Z and millennials, which kind of makes sense if you're earlier in your career and you need support from your leaders. So my advice here is to make sure that your attitude is understanding your team's needs. Are you really listening to your employees? I mean, really listening. If we want to develop in 2021, we need to find ways to share best practices in the same way that we shared the sourdough tips and tricks on social media, because you see the buzz that it creates for people. The simple technique to get this in action is something I call a 3-2-1. So at the end of any of the calls or demos that I sit on with my team, or sometimes it's internal calls, we just set up this 15-minute 3-2-1. Just 3 things that you did well. When I say did well, they're things that you would do again, and it's important to apply that focus to it. 2 things, if you had the time again, that you would do differently. And then 1 thing that you can focus on to become better. And if you make that a habit, you'd be amazed how much growth and sense of accomplishment that you can achieve within your sales team, and also what you learn as a leader from your team. Finally, the T. The T is for tenacity. You need that kind of fire in the belly and ice in the veins to be successful, and more than ever as we kind of go through so much change, because it's tough making so many decisions all the time. So how do you build pipeline in 2021 in a tenacious way? I think with our world now short of face-to-face contact, and all of us having to pivot and different go-to-market strategies, whether that's competing in digital formats, stand up from the crowd, webinars, everyone's doing video. I think everyone's a thought leader now on LinkedIn. It's really hard to stand out. So how can you do this? My advice is to take a tenacious approach to looking after your customers. Make sure they are loving your products and your services. Why? Because your customers are the best pipeline source you will ever create, whether that's upselling, cross-selling, or referrals for new business. So imagine it's your customers that are posting on LinkedIn about how great your services are. And imagine that next lead that you got was from a customer introducing you to your ideal buyer profile versus an expensive PPC lead, for example. So it's a great way to get your CFO on side as well, because you're starting to build way more efficient pipeline into your model. And also, if it comes from referral, we all know that the win rates, again, typically tend to be higher. There was a phrase that a very good friend of mine, Casper, one of the co-founders of Peakon, said to me when we started the Peakon dream. If it's not if, it's when. So it's not if, it's when. And I think that, sorry, listening to your thing, James, that it looks like I've disappeared on the video. So hopefully everyone can still see me, or at least you can hear me. It's more important than looking at my ugly mug. So my point was that how are you using your network and your nurture streams to build pipeline? We have this kind of real focus and pressure around like the new business, bigger TAMs. My advice would be to come in and focus a little bit. Who have you spoken to before? What % of your pipeline is coming from that source? At Peakon, the reps that hit their annual number in 2020, just finished a lot of our analysis, all of them had repeat buyers. So people that came back either when they changed role or the timings aligned, because they'd focused on looking after those people. And I think to kind of end this talk, like if you ever needed a great example of someone who leads on all of these fronts, is actually the man that sets these events up, Mr. James Ski. How many of you are at your 2nd, 3rd, 4th event that James has held? But me. How many of you told friends about James in this company because you see he's loyal to his mission in creating a powerful sales network? Me. And how many of you attend because his events help you with your can-do attitude and you learn new skills? Again, me, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. So by no means is this easy to do, but if it was easy, everyone would do it. It's the exceptional. And it's the people that want to become world-class that do this. So hopefully that's useful. Remember the acronym on LAT, hopefully some takeaways and things that you can apply to your team. Thank you for listening, and hit us to a strong, successful and safe 2021 back together. We'll hope we can all be sharing sourdough in person. Thanks very much, James, for hosting me.